would love to get your perspective for other organizations that are in these early messy spaces. A lot of times that's the space that's before the priorities are well defined. And when you come through the funnel of any kind of funder priorities, you very quickly get narrowed in on what can be funded as opposed to what it is that you actually need. And so I'm curious, where do you see, as this field evolves, where do you see philanthropy meeting infrastructure?
Positive psychology actually sort of popularized some of this stuff. There's a great TED Talk from way back by Sean Acor that...
Love that one.
Yeah, he shows a graph and he's like, you're not supposed to start your speech with a graph, but here's a graph.
Yeah.
And also this is meaningless, which is a great way to start a speech. But what I loved, and I think about frequently these days, is looking at that graph and then he's got the one little dot above the graph. And the joke is that's the weird one. We can get rid of that because it's a measurement error, and the reason we know it's a measurement error, I've watched this way too many times.
I love this talk.
Yeah, it's a good one, is because it's screwing up the data. But he talks about why that is exciting to him, because it's not a measurement error. It's like something is really outperforming everything else.
It's information.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not how do we get everybody to the average, it's how do we move the entire average up. And that's really what I get excited about. Yeah. I guess my way to answer the question that you asked is to help everybody get away from the scarcity mindset, to help people focus on a shared outcome that we can all agree with and be agnostic and open-minded about the approaches we take to get there. And then being transparent. And I think it's something that has not been present in the space because of how the social sector evolved. But it's a problem that social sector leaders tend to reinforce. They don't have hard questions with donors because they feel like they can't. They feel like they can't jeopardize a relationship, or that their funder won't understand. Or
the power dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, the incentive structure, the power dynamics are all messed up. And so they're sort of needlessly, I would say, reinforcing the problems that are really hamstringing them and getting their work done. And so, yeah, what I hope to do, what I see for the future is getting away from that, helping leaders feel comfortable having those hard conversations, educating the funder side in terms of the things that matter, and then aligning it better so that I can, as a development director or whoever, have a meaningful conversation with a donor that's honest and transparent, speaks to the needs, speaks to the complexity of the issue, and have them understand and embrace that, and be okay with funding things that are complex or might fail. We talked a little bit about how an infrastructure problem has the obvious sort of socioeconomic impact, but that it also has health outcomes. And I think a lot of people find that problematic in a sense of like trying to claim impact in areas that are not directly related to your cause, which there's an argument for that, I think. But I also, personally, I don't buy it as much. Like, I think you have to be careful and you have to be diligent about what you're reporting, but I also think it's important to have inclusive stakeholdership, to be able to speak with everybody involved, and to look at the unintended consequences, so to speak, which can be positive or negative.
I used to get really irritated when folks would come up with projects and describe all these co-benefits, just kind of hand wave about them without really being specific. And I think in a lot of ways it became a distraction to try to say that, oh, we've got this broad set of things. I think the field, especially in green infrastructure, has really evolved. So people have gotten a lot better about being specific about what the benefits are. I think the next step that we really need to take is say, who are the beneficiaries? So it's not just there's all these hundreds of millions of dollars of value created. It's whose life is better off as a result of this. And we can move the needle on the urgent need and open the door to the systems change. Because if we are just constantly addressing the acute needs, you end up in this triage mode and you never quite get to the preventative care.
Right.
But if you start with the preventative care, it takes decades and you really don't know if the outcome is a result of only what you did, right? There's a good bit of luck and timing in that. And so the combo is really where you can make, I think, the strongest case for making people better off today and ensuring that they stay well over time.
Talk a lot these days in brainstorming about heads in beds philanthropy versus systems change, and it really does take both. People need a place to sleep. It's very valuable.
I will never talk to anyone with a moldy basement about sea level rise.
Right.
Yeah, it's deeply wrong. But you need to do both, right? And I think what we've learned is instead of expecting different people to do both, if we can ask the questions that allow us to bring those two things closer together, we end up with higher integrity projects.
I think higher integrity projects, but also being contextually aware and understanding where your impact sits and how what you're doing influences other stuff and what you might do differently to do better there.
And I think that makes a lot of difference in our work because it lets us maintain trust over time. You're not forcing outcomes, you're enabling them.